Hello, strangers. We're starting this episode off a little bit differently than normal. I'm putting a disclaimer in here that if you have younger kids and they listen with you, they may want to skip this one as we will be going into the history and background of Santa Claus and St. Nicholas. Thank you for listening, and we're going to jump into the narrative now.
It's a cold December evening, and you're worn out from a busy day. You had spent the last 12 hours baking, cleaning, and putting the last-minute touches on your Christmas decorations. Everything needed to be just right for tomorrow. You'd be hosting your entire family for Christmas dinner, and it was going to be a full house. Putting the kids to bed had been a bit of a struggle as the excitement of upcoming Christmas morning had them bouncing off the walls. But the reminder of a certain big man in a red suit passing up households of misbehaving children quickly had them under the covers. Now it was your turn to snuggle into bed for a good rest before the big day tomorrow. You were just starting to drift off when a sudden crunch, thud, thump had you sitting bolt upright in bed. Heart-thumping from the startle, you stare around the darkened room for any signs that something is amiss, but all's still. Your breathing slows, and you're just starting to settle back under the thick quilt when a shadow flashes past the window. That does it. Tossing back the blankets, you rise from your cozy nest and creep towards the window. Even with the curtains pulled, the moonlight is so bright it seeps its way through material, lighting your way. When you pull the curtains aside to peer outside, the full moon shining on the new-fallen snow is so bright it lights up midnight like it's midday. You squint through the cold window pane, your breath fogging up the glass, but you're determined to find the source of the disturbance. Sudden movement at the edge of your vision catches your eye. Your face snaps around, and for the second time that night, your heart starts racing, because there's no way. There is no way. You blink, but it's still there. A sleigh, 8 reindeer, and holding the reins, a portly man with a long white beard and a red, fluffy suit. If you've been paying attention, you may realize that I've just retold the beginning of the classic Christmas poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, or more commonly known as The Night Before Christmas. But what you may not know is the key figure in this poem, the big man himself, Santa Claus, is not just a delightful figure pulled from the poet's imagination. Santa's legacy extends far, far beyond Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 depiction. I'm Christiana.
And I'm Bree.
Settle in and hang your stockings by the chimney with care.
Because you're about to hear something strange.
Welcome to episode 5, Up on the Housetop. I hope you enjoyed that.
I did.
That was fun to write. What do you know about Santa?
The actual figure or the,
Any of it.
It's funny when you were reading that, I was like, she is pulling things from that short story.
You're copyright?
I've sung in a lot of choral groups, and one of the ones in high school was a women's chorus.
Yeah.
And we sang Sweet Adeline is female barbershop, right?
Yeah.
We sang this version of that called Christmas Chopsticks. So it was kind of based off the do 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 do.
Right.
And it was most of the words in that. So in my brain, I'm like,
singing along.
Yeah.
That's fun.
But to the actual question at hand, as far as the person being that has become assimilated with the Christmas holiday.
Right.
You know, I did grow up with the whole Santa Claus is coming. No, my parents, instead of leaving milk and cookies out, did I ever tell you this?
No.
Left ring bologna, cheese, and beer.
Ooh.
But
I mean, I'm okay with the cheese part, but
maybe it was deer bologna. Oh, that would be really weird.
Santa's like, y'all a bunch of jokers.
I hope it was ring. Anyways, as far as I know a little bit about the historical figure, he was a saint in modern day Turkey. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know this because I just like odd things, and he has come up as a subject on the podcast Lore more than once.
Oh, yeah. Good old Aaron.
Yes, so
I'm going to get started.
The tulpa.
Yes, I wanted to say the tulpa that we know today as Santa Claus was created from the story of a saint, St. Nicholas of Myra, or also known as St. Nicholas of Bari or Bari. I believe it's Bari. He is the patron saint of, quote, sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, toy makers, unmarried people, and students in various cities and counties across Europe.
He got like the grab bag of things that no one else wanted to be saints of.
He's also sometimes known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker due to miracles attributed to his constant prayer. And from what my research says, it sounds like he was overall a decent guy, known for his many good deeds and his kindness, as well as his piety. Digging back into the historical evidence of St. Nicholas, this was really interesting, and it was a time, because my historical knowledge starts around the 1860s and ends around the 1940s, because those are the eras that I reenact. And this went back all the way to like the 4th century, so I was a little mind blown.
Well, and things weren't necessarily recorded as well.
Exactly. So a lot of what I have is mostly through Wikipedia, and I know that's not the most reliable source. I'm just going to be straight up honest and transparent here. My head was spinning, so I did my best. So we don't actually, like you just said, have much documentation about St. Nicholas during his life, but there are mentions of him through early history. There's one account that historians believe to be the most accurate depiction of his life, which is an account named The Life of St. Nicholas, and it was written by Michael the Archimandrite. This gentleman lived in the 9th century, so quite some time after St. Nick, but it's believed that his account is accurate because it is based on older written sources, as well as the way the history was written. However, the names of these older written sources are also unknown. So we're convoluted here. Basically, a lot of what is known appears to be educated guesswork, but there are points that tend to stick out that match up in various accounts. So in the 5th century, the Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II, who ruled at the beginning of the 5th century, ordered the construction of a church by the name of St. Nicholas Church in the then city of Myra. This church still stands today. So the modern city of Demir in the Antalya province in Turkey. The church is now a museum, and I want to visit at some point. I think that's cool.
How safe is Turkey to visit right now?
Probably not very.
Sometime in the future when things hopefully get
calm
better.
Down. Yes. So on to the 6th century, St. Nicholas's name is listed as Nicholas of Myra of Lycia on a list of people who attended the Council of Nicaea. Not Lycia.
And that's actually a really important thing, the Council of Nicaea in like the Christian faith. It was when they were figuring out like the divinity of Jesus. The Nicene Creed, if you are someone who grew up in a church, would be very well known.
Familiar.
Yeah.
Sure. So the list that St. Nicholas's name was written on was written in the following epitome, which I'm going to do my best here. The Historiae Ecclesiasticae Tripartite Epitome, which basically is the abridged version of the history of the Christian Church. It was, and this is a quote, the standard manual of church history in medieval Europe, and it was written in the 6th century. So St. Nicholas's name is written on a list that was found in that big book. Lots of connections here. Writings also show that St. Nicholas had a strong established following by the 6th century.
My brain was like, he found the elves already.
So Procopius, a Byzantine historian, noted that another ruler, Justinian I, renovated churches dedicated to St. Nicholas sometime in the 6th century. So basically, we're seeing him throughout history, connecting him back to his life. So his life history, there's not much known about St. Nicholas's life, again, due to lack of historical documents, but we do have some idea about him and his deeds. It's believed that he was born in the 3rd century, according to Wikipedia, March 15th, in the year of 270. So we're in the 3-digit years here, friends. To a wealthy family in the city of Patara in Lycia. Lycia was, at that time, a Roman province. The area is located on the coast of modern-day Turkey. St. Nicholas's parents died when he was young from an epidemic. It didn't say what, some kind of horrible outbreak.
It could have been a lot of things at that time in history.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
still very unfortunate.
Yeah. Some accounts state that St. Nicholas's uncle was the bishop of Myra and that he ordained his nephew as a priest. And when Nicholas was young, he made the pilgrimage to the Holy Land, now known as Palestine. After his visit, he returned to Myra, where he became the bishop. The story, according to Wikipedia, was the bishop in Myra had recently passed away, and that the priests in Myra decided that the first priest to enter the church would become the new bishop. Nicholas just happened to be the first one to enter, and they were said, "Congratulations, you're our bishop now."
I can see that being like provisionalist, a good word.
Yeah.
A like way of showing that in retrospect, this person was supposed to be important because God put him at the right spot at the right time.
Sure.
We'll get into that in a future episode of mine. Not about St. Nicholas, about someone else.
Ooh, okay. All right. At the time that St. Nicholas was alive, Christians were being very heavily persecuted by the Roman Empire. One legend states that St. Nicholas was imprisoned for a while during this time. Some accounts say that he was tortured and he was also exiled. It is believed that he was released by the rule of Constantine the Great. And if this legend is true, he would have been imprisoned under the rule of Emperor Diocletian, who ruled between 284 and 305, the years. Constantine the Great ruled between the year 306 to 337, so logically he could have been imprisoned from a single year to as long as 53 years. However, Wiki states this is unlikely to be factual.
The 53 years or the being imprisoned?
The being imprisoned.
Okay. And I do trying to remember my ancient Christianity. Constantine was the one who switched the Roman Empire over from its previous deity worship, its previous religions, to Christianity.
Oh.
So that, I could be wrong. It's been a hot minute since I've had any classes like that.
Sure.
But
that's interesting.
Time-wise,
makes sense.
It would line up because
Sure.
I believe he was the one that made Christianity the religion of the empire.
Versus, like, worshipping Zeus or... Oh, wow.
Instead of, well, not Zeus. Zeus is Greek.
That's Greek. I'm sorry.
Jupiter.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Roman pantheon is very similar to the Greek.
From what I could understand, it makes sense that St. Nicholas would have been persecuted. Whether he was actually imprisoned, exiled, etc. is up for debate. So during his visit to the Council of Nicaea that I mentioned above, legend has it that he slapped a supposed heretic across the face. Again, historical evidence of this is not strong, but some historians point out the fact that because the story doesn't reflect well on St. Nick's character, it doesn't make sense that people documenting his life would make it up. I feel like a lot of this, both from our point of view and historians, it's got to be some educated guesswork. So I could see both sides. I think it depends on who wrote the history. Did they want to make him look bad, or were they trying to show him in a good light? We don't know. So St. Nicholas died in the 4th century, again, according to Wikipedia, December 6th in the year 343. Several of the resources I use state he was buried in the Church of Myra, but Wiki stated that there is archaeological evidence that he may have been first buried on the Turkish island of Gemile. I believe it's Gamile. I'm not 100% certain. But then he was later moved to Myra. In the year 1087, St. Nicholas's remains were removed from Myra and taken to the Italian city of Bari, which is probably why he's known as Nicholas of Bari in some ways.
Why?
Trigger warning for grave robbing, in my opinion here, friends. It's not entirely clear whether the removal of St. Nicholas's skeleton was theft or salvation.
Oh, relic hunting. Okay.
Not relic hunting. There was... The people of Turkey state it was blatant theft. The Italians state it was a rescue to protect the remains from invaders.
Crusades were going on at this time, weren't they?
Oh, man. Potentially, yes. If I understood the research correctly, there was a bunch of not good stuff that was happening at that time. And that's why the Italians were like, oh no, we rescued these remains to keep them from getting into the hands of bad people. Meanwhile, the people in Myra were like, no, he was buried here. You stole them. Bizarre. Please don't move bodies, guys. It's really disrespectful.
Not without like express permission.
Yes.
Or unless it's like, hey, this church is about to be attacked.
Like, yeah.
Or flooded, or
like, let's come to an agreement before we just dig up
corpses.
Remains. From what I can tell, Saint Nick remains mostly buried in Bari in the Basilica di San Nicola due to this day. I say mostly because due to a bunch of confusing political movements in the church, I believe the pieces of his skeleton have been distributed across the world.
So I think in the Catholic faith, there are churches that have parts of saints also. Do you know what Basilica di San Nicola means?
I assumed it was the Basilica of St. Nicholas.
Yep.
Okay.
Just make it fancier.
That's icky to me. I saw more about that. There was like specifics about like there's like a hip bone. I think that might be in America actually. I'm like, guys, can you let this man rest?
Well, and like neither of us are Catholic, right? And
Sure.
They do have different beliefs about the remains of certain saints possessing certain powers.
Okay.
Certain churches will have certain parts of remains of saints.
Okay. And like as a protection kind of thing?
I think they kind of venerate them.
Okay.
And some of these parts are supposed to be, I'm talking like out of thin air because I'm pulling from stuff that I learned a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of it's veneration. I think part of it is like, it's something that is supposed to be helpful to the congregation. Like,
okay.
I would have to talk to someone who's actively Catholic and be like, what do you, and I know some people I could ask.
That'd be a fun conversation. Wrapping up, I'm not, it again, like you said, we don't know, we're not Catholic, so however you look at that, that's just my view from the outside looking in. I don't mean that to be rude or judgmental. So I'm going to move on to the miracles that are said to have been performed by St. Nicholas in his time. The first story is called The Three Women. I want to give a trigger warning here. Trigger warning for essentially being forced into sex work non-consensually. The Three Women. So when St. Nicholas's parents died, he distributed their wealth to those in need. In particular, there was a man with 3 daughters who was devout, but he was very poor. Due to his poverty, he would be unable to give dowry to his daughters' future husbands. And in those times, a dowry was very, very important in marriage. The bigger the dowry, the better the husband, essentially, which it feels a little almost like you're selling your daughters off, but not quite. It's not quite that, but the more you could give, the better person you could find for them.
Was the purpose of a dowry to like help provide for the daughter?
I think so. Yeah,
because they're not.
It's not. You're not selling them off, but it's like a weird.
I'm not defending it. I'm just asking.
No. I understand. I know what you're saying. It's just it was a strange custom, I guess. I believe a dowry was meant to help the couple, like, with their marriage, with their home, with their future children. And the more that someone could bring into a marriage, the more likely that a well-to-do person would want to marry into that family. Is the best way I believe understand it.
I'm sure that was taken advantage of horribly at times, though.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyways, sorry.
So no, that's okay. So without a dowry, it was very unlikely that the man's daughters would ever be able to marry, and to survive, they would be forced into a life of sex work. When St. Nicholas heard of this, he snuck into this man's house, or snuck over to, not into this man's house, he snuck to his house on 3 different nights to drop a bag of gold through his window to save his daughters from that fate of being forced into that kind of a life. There were a couple different reasonings behind why he didn't just do this publicly. I think one of them was he didn't need to necessarily be like recognized for doing it. The other one was to help that man save face of like essentially having to like accept charity from someone. So, but we can kind of see we're tying into some modern day tulpas here of Santa coming to people's houses at night.
Dropping bags of gold.
Dropping bags. He dropping dollar bills, y'all. So the next story is about saving the falsely accused innocents. One story tells of a time where St. Nicholas stopped an executioner from executing 3 falsely convicted men and setting them free from their chains. A similar story talks about St. Nicholas appearing to a consul in this person's dream. This consul had apparently accepted a bribe to execute 3 generals, but released them after St. Nicholas appeared in his dream and threatened that he's going to go to hell if he went through with this.
I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just laughing like, man, not like this guy has it all.
Yeah.
He can dream walk.
He's doing the most. He's giving money out. He can do the most.
He kind of makes like our Santa Claus look like.
So I've got 2 more stories here. Trigger warning here. This story is about raising children from the dead.
I know this one.
This is a bad one,
yeah,
guys.
This is a
child death and mutilation of a corpse.
Isn't there like cannibalism in this one too? Yeah, okay.
Yes. So trigger warning for all of that. The third story tells of a butcher who murdered 3 children and planned to sell their meat disguised as pork. This story takes place in a time of a really horrific famine, and the butcher supposedly lured these 3 children into his house, murdered them, and then basically began to pickle their remains. He stuffed them in a barrel of brine. St. Nicholas came to the shop and found these children and resurrected them by making the sign of the cross.
Do you know why he was selling it as pork?
I don't know why. That was just the type of meat that the research said. I didn't...
Because apparently human flesh tastes like pork. I don't know this from personal experience. That's why it's called long pig.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. So, yes, St. Nicholas came to the shop, found these children, and resurrected them. So, all ended well, thankfully.
Well, that ends well.
Yes. The last story I have is much gentler, and it is very reminiscent of a story out of the New Testament, either going to or coming back from his pilgrimage to Palestine when he was young. The ship St. Nicholas was traveling on got hit by a massive storm and was nearly destroyed. St. Nicholas began to pray, and suddenly the storm receded and left the ship intact. So...
That is really out of the New Testament.
Correct, yes. There is for those that might not know, there is a story in the New Testament about Jesus calming stormy seas and walking on water, and one of his followers was able to walk on water for a moment, right?
Yeah, it was Peter, I think.
Peter. But then he started to doubt and started to sink.
So yeah, Peter started to doubt, and then he just started to sink.
Right. So we have all kinds of connections happening here. On to St. Nicholas's legacy. St. Nicholas Day is celebrated in many countries on December 6th, which is the day that it's believed he passed away. St. Nicholas Day is celebrated with presents given to children, similar to Christmas Day. Due to the legends surrounding St. Nicholas's miracles, he became known as a gift giver, giving dowry to the 3 women, a lover and protector of children, restoring life to the murdered children, and the patron saint of sailors due to him calming the stormy seas. We see the ripple of this in modern times and traditions, for example, gift giving to children on Christmas. Yes.
Do you think? I was thinking of the words. The Christmas Carol, like I saw 3 ships. Do you think that's related to that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I saw, yeah. Christmas Day on Christmas Day. I don't know.
We'll look that up.
Possibly. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. But...
That's the only nautical Christmas thing I can think of.
Yeah. That mood makes sense. That's cool.
Anyways.
So another legacy that was born of St. Nicholas was Sinterklaas. While St. Nicholas was sort of swept to the side after the Reformation in Europe, he was still celebrated in Holland on a day known as Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas is celebrated on December 6th, the day that St. Nicholas died, or it also is sometimes the day before, celebrated on December 5th. So on Sinterklaas, St. Nicholas was known to ride into town on a white horse. He wore a red bishop's robe and gave treats and presents to good children, while naughty children were given lumps of coal, potatoes, or switches. which, like, oof.
Switches or, like, whip?
Switches is
Like,
what.
But, like, what are switches?
Switches
Like
are...
branches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, like, a phrase, you know, and unfortunately, I feel it's unfortunate, generation before ours, you often will hear stories of, like, oh, I had to go cut my own switch out of the backyard. And it's like, you literally had to cut the branch that your parents were going to hit you with, which is sad.
Is this at all, not the switches, the Sinterklaas.
Mm-hmm.
Is this at all related to, oh my goodness, what is it called? It's like there's oranges, but there's not. Do you know what I'm talking about? What is it called?
Something about celebrating with oranges were left in children's stockings, but I don't remember. Yes,
is that the orange thing?
Am
I making this up?
No, I was debating adding some things about Christkindlesnot.
Okay, I'm not.
And again, that was something that I decided to cut so that I wasn't getting too deep into things. But there was mention of that as being.
I don't think it has anything to do with St. Nicholas.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like there's a little candle, an orange with a candle in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking of something different, but that's interesting.
There's so many holiday traditions just within like the realm of Christianity as far as like different countries and stuff, but I will stop talking.
No, you're fine. And it does get kind of convoluted and difficult because so much of it gets wrapped into each other. It sometimes gets hard to distinguish the origin. What about Santa Claus? Sinterklaas was brought to the United States by Dutch immigrants who brought the tradition with them in the 1700s to what was then known as New Amsterdam. Today it's New York City. New York.
We know. We've been there.
Oh, yeah. The name Santa Claus was derived from the name Sinterklaas. In 1809, Washington Irving...
Hey, we know him too.
Sleepy Hollow! Wrote a book, The History of New York, where he described St. Nicholas as the patron saint of New York.
I'm pretty sure I read that book.
Oh, cool.
And his short stories one.
Okay,
had,
yeah.
Not Rumpelstiltskin. Rick Van Winkle?
Yes, where he slept for
100 years.
I was thinking of that. I just couldn't think of the title. When Santa first came to the United States, he was described in many different ways. He was described as a rascal with a blue three-cornered hat, a red waistcoat, and yellow stockings. He was described as a man wearing a broad-brimmed hat and a huge pair of Flemish trunk hose. But the modern-day depiction of Santa as a jolly old man in a red coat and a white beard comes from a cartoon drawn for Harper's Weekly by the cartoonist Thomas Nast. He took the inspiration from the poem The Night Before Christmas, which was written by Clement Clarke Moore in 1822.
Can I interject really quick?
Yeah.
If you want to hear a really cool reading of it, and you're like me, and really like Dan Smith from Bastille, he actually, like, there's a YouTube video of him reading it somewhere.
Oh, cool.
If you want to hear a nice British accent?
Yeah, I always want to hear a nice British accent. Or Scottish accent. Take it. We should link that. We can link that story. That'd be fun. I will
do my best to find that again, yep.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure the date of the cartoon. Britannica, like when the cartoon was drawn, Britannica states it was from 1863, but History Channel article that I pulled from states it was from 1881. I honestly am not sure when this cartoon was drawn. I was having a hard time figuring it out. But it was for Harper's Weekly. According to the History Channel article, Nast gave Santa his red suit, his workshop in the North Pole, his helpful toy-making elves, and his wife, Mrs. Claus. And I've actually wondered about where the red suit itself came from, because he's not actually described in the poem as wearing a red suit. And I've had that thought before and thought I was just misremembering the poem.
No, you're not.
It literally says, this is directly from the poem by Clement Clarke Moore. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook like he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself.
That would not be my reaction to seeing someone in my house.
Get out of my house.
Even if it was Santa Claus, I would not.
Be like, what are you doing here? Get out.
It's like, excuse me, Mr. Claus.
I'm going to need you to go back up the chimney. Leave your reindeer because I want to pet them, but I need you to go away.
I wonder if it was like the rosy description and people just kind of put red elsewhere.
That makes sense. That does make sense. I
also wonder if it had to do with what colors were most available for print at that time.
Oh, that's possible. Also, I just thought of this. So, Sinterklaas, he was described as riding into town on the white horse with the red bishop's robe. So maybe he pulled from the legend as possible. Well as being available for print. Makes sense. So, interesting. So we're reaching the end here. As to how Santa Claus began to shift from being celebrated from December 6th to the 25th, I'm not 100% sure. My educated guess is the traditions combined themselves over the years to become what it is today, kind of like we were discussing. There he is.
Can we talk about tulpas?
Yeah, let's talk about tulpas.
I'm sorry, were you finished with your thought?
Yeah, that's the end. That's what I got.
So, my friend, you called Santa Claus a tulpa earlier.
I did.
And some of our listeners, I almost said readers, may not be familiar with what that concept is.
Oh, true. So I think we talked some about this in our other podcast that we did before this one, but a tulpa is essentially a figment or, what's the word I'm looking for?
A tulpa is kind of a misnomer from Buddhism. It's a thought form. So it's the idea that if someone or a group of people visualize and think about something enough, it will start to take physical form.
Yes, yeah.
Santa Claus is one of the things that kind of comes, actually, the Santa Claus the tulpa thing, I'm pretty sure I am heavily borrowing from Believing the Bizarre. Oh, one of their very first episodes was like, is Slender Man a tulpa? And I think Santa Claus, if you guys are listening and I'm getting that wrong, I am so sorry. That was like 4 years ago, though.
Tyler and Charlie. What's up, homies?
Give me some grace on that one.
Shout out to Believing the Bizarre. We love you guys.
Yeah. And producer Ben. We don't forget him.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Ben.
If I'm getting that wrong, I am so sorry. But it's been like 4 years since that episode came out.
Sure.
That was an early one.
But that's kind of, and especially I think children, believe so strongly in Santa Claus, and he does become like a figure. He's real in so many, again, especially children's minds. He is a real person, and the elves and Mrs. Claus, and he's just built this entire realm around him.
Why do you think this idea of Santa Claus being a tulpa? Like, what do you think of?
I mean, I think, what do you...
Because you already said, like, why, but, like, what do you think of it? Like, what do you think of this idea of Santa? Like, let's suspend disbelief for a second here, because there's like Reddit, right? Reddit is where you go for all the fun. There are, like, Reddit Santa Claus encounters.
Yeah.
Like...
so I can kind of give one myself, actually. And I wanted to
Reddit Santa Claus encounter?
Not a Reddit, but one of my own. So, and I'm sure at this point, likely this was a dream. But when I was little, and I still remember this very, very clearly, like, little girl, still believed in Santa. I remember laying in my bed and waking up at some point and very distinctly hearing a ho, 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 like a big, loud, and then scraping on my roof. Like, I distinctly remember it. And again,
chills.
I know, like, and I'm sure, again, was that likely a dream? Probably. But it's still cool. Like, I kind of love it. Like, granted, like, knowing what I know now about, like, true crime and everything, it's a little weird to think about someone just breaking into your house. But, I've always also been taught, like, Santa Claus is...
the embodiment of good.
Yeah, and it's magic, and it's kindness, and it's giving to others, and it's loving people without borders, and I love that. There are much worse things that kids could believe in.
Slenderman.
Yeah, precisely.
If humans had the ability to make something real, like, what a better thing to make real
Right.
than this, like, idea of charity and this idea of doesn't matter if, well, I mean, I guess bad kids get coal, but, like, there's, heat your house with that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there, I mean, you have Krampus who literally beats children.
But I agree with you, right? Like, if we're going to bring the current idea of Santa Claus, which is also very heavily commercialized.
Sure.
But this idea of this, like, person that just gives and makes sure all the kids have toys.
Just, and are happy. And he likes cocoa and milk and cookies.
We used to leave, like, popcorn and stuff out for the reindeer.
Yeah, I used to, carrots. I always used to, because I mean, I think you probably empathize with this. Like, growing up, I was, like, always, I mean, still do love animals, love all animals. So I was like, the reindeer!
They have to have something, too. They work really hard.
They do work really hard.
We definitely, the church I grew up in had, like, a Christmas bazaar.
Uh-huh.
And I think we used to occasionally get, like, reindeer. Like, someone, and so sweet, someone would make, like, baggies of reindeer food that you would just sprinkle. So, like, it was, like, corn.
Sure. Like, stuff that other animals could eat.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. I want to shout out, too, similar vein, or not really a similar vein, it's adjacent, the reindeer farm in Alaska. If you get a chance to go see the reindeer farm, go do it. It's really cool. And that's literally what it's called. It's semi-close to Anchorage.
You know, I love how the description is 8 little reindeer. Mm-hmm. Caribou are huge.
They're big.
Caribou are not little.
No. Some of them can be. Some of them. So when I went to see this farm, this was on a trip I went to see my friend our friend out in Alaska. Some of them are a little bit smaller, like the females, but some of the males are big.
But like even white-tailed deer, which is what we have in abundance here, aren't small.
They're not small. No, not at all. And their antlers, like reindeer's antlers, I mean, white-tailed deer too, but there was one of the males there, like huge, stuck straight. It was so cool. We should post pictures.
It would be hard if you went into all the history. We'd be here for 6 hours.
Oh, yeah. Just, I mean, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Literally half of my research was me reading something and going, I have no idea what that means. Let's Google it. And then I'd go off into another whole thing, and it was just narrowing down, okay, how do I get this into an episode that's not going to be a million years long?
Well, and it's, we tend to do more broad overviews on here because that's, we're not a podcast that is academic. We'd like to be as factual, and we do say when we're using Wikipedia as a source, right? Sure. But some of the stuff we're looking up is kind of obscure.
Mm-hmm. And I know one of the websites I used specifically was, I'm going to say this in this way, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way. It's just what I was viewing was very skewed towards a Christian point of view, because this is a Catholic saint. So that, I'm sure, affected how that article was written. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in any kind of way. It
was from a Catholic perspective.
Yeah. It's an interesting, though. It's where I pulled that from it's a really interesting website. It's, I believe, a traveling exhibit about the Saint Nicholas. And
oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it'll be in the notes if you guys want to check the website out. It was a huge website. It had the overview of his life. It had information about Sinterklaas. It had a lot there. Some of it probably was likely written in a way that maybe was a little biased, we'll say, because it was written from a certain point of view, and that's okay, but just to be transparent.
Written from that perspective, that makes sense, though, because
it's a Christian saint, or a Catholic saint. Yeah.
So what drew you to this topic?
So I wanted a fun Christmas topic to move into the holiday season. While we're recording this, it's not the holiday season, but
it's close. We're 2 weeks from Thanksgiving.
That's true.
Thanksgiving is late this year.
Yeah. So we're getting there. And I knew that the version of Santa Claus today was based on a historical figure. And I just thought it'd be a fun one to deep dive into that and get a little extra information on him.
Did the episode change your view on this topic at all?
In a sense, I didn't I say this a lot, I feel it educated me a lot because I did not have many strong thoughts about Santa Claus to begin with, beyond knowing he's based in this historical figure. I had no idea how far back the history went or how convoluted some of it is, so it definitely took me out of my depth, which is fun in a way.
That's how you expand your comfort zone.
Exactly.
What did you find the most strange about this topic?
The religious history and how complicated it is. Like, genuinely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. And I think we talked about perspectives earlier, right?
Yeah.
I have a degree in religious studies. To me, it's like, oh, yeah, it's really, there's a lot. But for someone who, like, if I would go into Civil War history or any of the eras that even World War I, I'd be like, what? And that's something I probably should know more about because it's not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting thing to think about.
It just depends on what you've had classes in, what you're interested in, and you know, we come from very different backgrounds in, like, even just being in school. Well, we can cut this out if you want. We're both animal majors in our respective ways, but like my minor and your minors were very, very different from each other. So
I'm okay keeping that in because I'm not in that field anymore.
Okay.
My second I had a second major and a minor. Actually, my minor was an animal minor.
Oh, okay.
It was animal studies.
Oh, that's right. And then I started as just an art minor, and then had to drop that and turn into a business minor. So
we cover it all. Yeah. My second major was my religious studies.
Mm-hmm. So good times, friends.
Yes, it's
good. We're learning.
It's good to have a vast, like, it's good to be well-rounded, to have different interests, and it's even better to have people around you that have different areas of expertise. To learn from.
It's fun.
We would love to hear from you. If you have a suggestion for a strange or mysterious topic, or a compliment.
I mean, a compliment too.
Or a comment about an episode, or you just want to chat, please do reach out. You can comment directly on individual episodes on Spotify, or leave an overall review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Instagram at something_strangepod. You can also send us an email at somethingstrangepod24@gmail.com.
Well, strangers, it's time for us to part ways.
Until we meet again, make sure you hang up those stockings.
We'll be back again soon with another
Something Strange.